Lofrano works with the Department of Corrections. Work with the Department of Corrections began several years ago with the program Mind the Gap, designed to support families affected by incarceration. Ms. Lofrano currently works as the Child Support Liaison for the Minnesota Department of Corrections and continues to devote her attention to opportunities that enhance child support through communication with inmates and corrections personnel.
So we're going to switch gears from moms who are incarcerated to fathers who are incarcerated. And I love hearing about the wonderful programs that happen at Shakopee to support the mothers and their children who are incarcerated. And I don't think one takes away from the other. We don't have the same services for our fathers. And this is completely off my presentation, so I apologize, but I work with these guys every day. And I do want to say that the men that I talk to when we talk about being a parent, they consider an unborn child that they know as theirs as their child. When we talk about how many children do you have, I will get the answer, I have 2 and one on the way. You know, she's 7 months pregnant or whatever. So I think we have to remember that men are parents too, and fathers care about their children too. So with that, I will start with Mind the Gap. Mind the Gap was a grant project, okay? So what I'm going to talk about, I'll talk a little bit about that grant project, but I'll also talk about the other work that I do with mostly men incarcerated in our state prisons. First of all, I do want to thank you for the opportunity to be here. Most of the time, I speak to my own colleagues. So I get to speak to child support, or I get to speak to the Department of Corrections, and that's all great. We all need to know what each other are doing. But I don't often get the opportunity to speak to educators or social workers or public health, and so this is really exciting for me and a great opportunity. And I hope you'll be interested in what we're talking about. Like I said, my name's Lori Lofrano. I'm the Child Support Liaison for the Department of Corrections. So what that basically means, or started to mean, was I work at the facilities and deal with child support and paternity issues, which ends up going into all sort of child issues, whether it be custody or visiting or anything like that. So my position isn't necessarily a part of Mind the Gap, however, it's what created the Mind the Gap grant opportunity that we did. I'm gonna try to start with the video. They taught me how to do this. Let's see if I can remember. No, I might need help here. It's command something, right? Thank you. I am definitely technology deficient. Okay, this is a video that came out of the Mind the Gap program that tells a little bit about the program, and you get to hear.
Feeling like it's beginning to be too much, or I'm not doing enough, or whatever I feel, you know, those moments that I believe we all have in life, you know, it's really helpful. It's a release, and that's what I'm using it for, because my releases in the past weren't, you know, I wasn't looking for somebody to talk to or anything like that. I probably, you know, do some of the things that got me where I was before. I mean, it all derived from running the streets. You know, I grew up in a home that there wasn't any role model. I mean, well, everyone's a role model, but there wasn't any positive role models, I should say it like that. No one worked in my home growing up. You know, it was just a lot of arguing, fighting, and everyone, you know, either sold drugs or tried to have some type of hustle. No one wanted a job. So as a result, I'm not blaming, but I did the same thing, you know. So therefore, running the streets was like it was my thing. And as a result of that, I ended up, what I went to prison for was an assault. But again, it was just complete dysfunction. I never had really held down a job or completed anything, or so, you know, now it's obviously different. I'm trying to every step of the way. That's, you know, I'm hustling now through jobs or through school, or, you know, I'm putting my hustle to positive things, you know, and it's just calling it hustle, but it's hard work.
And after they would get out, I continued working with them, helping them with employment, housing, empowerment, child support, you name it. might help them with it. My goal was to like help them, you know, cut down recidivism, and help these by helping these individuals actually, you know, get the power within themselves to stay out of prison.
And pretty much everything that he said, we did, and due to that, I'm here today speaking to you.
Oh, I think that it was a good program to start getting connected and make the non-custodial parents realize that child support is not always the bad person, that we can help them. If they work with us, there's many things that we can help them out with, such as a driver's license or you know, reducing their support or suspending their support. So I think the communication opened up a lot. Child support orders for a lot of people that have gone into prison, the orders were set unrealistically. They weren't set based on true information.
Right.
And then they keep accumulating, and if they're in there for 1 year even, 6 months even, I mean, at $300 a month, that's a lot of money to owe when you come out, and you're already behind, and then issues start happening, such as, you know, their driver's license goes away, we start intercepting their taxes, their credit report is no good, they can't go to school because the grants and loans are stopped. Right. So absolutely the very first issue should be to stop the support.
We know that probably 60% of our offenders, at least, are parents, and a large percentage of those parents are connected in some way to our Minnesota child support system, and a large percentage of them weren't communicating with the county child support. They had a very adversarial relationship with them, if there was any relationship at all. And so, number one, starting to address the big issues, getting orders suspended when they are incarcerated, looking at the arrearages and talking to the counties about how those added up, who they're owed to, if there's some remedy to deal with some of those, and to get that communication open, and help the offender understand that really child support's not going away. It is not going to go away. It will follow you when you are released, and it will continue to follow you, and you have the choice to actively evade it, which oftentimes ends up being, you know, moving them back into criminal behavior, or to address it, and really trying to move them to address it and make it not so scary, make it not so adversarial.
But again, like you spoke of, what you've seen in my daughter is the same thing I see, and is also the same thing that keeps me going. And not only just with her, again with the other 4 children that I'm, you know, back into their lives, you know, at a good, it's a good pace. I spend a lot of time with them, and I like it. And I also see the same thing out of all of them as well. So that right there is just is the constant. It's, you know, it's what keeps me going, as well as seeing that my goals get accomplished too.
And I just want to tell you that Armand, our participant who agreed to speak on video, is doing wonderfully. He has 2 jobs, he's paying his child support, and he is involved in 3 out of his 4 children's life, and he's working on getting some parenting time with the 4th. So he's doing a great job, as are a lot of our participants. Not all, but a lot. All right. So I think we heard statistics on how many children there are who have a parent who's incarcerated. I heard 2.7 million. Every single one of those 2.7 million children have a mother and a father. Now, we may not know what the relationship or the contact with the mother and father is at the time of incarceration, but they each have a mother and a father. Thus, the Mind the Gap grant started. We started to realize once I started this position that child support issues and parenting issues and employment issues and custody issues, all of those things affect reentry, affect how a father, in this case with this grant, is going to succeed or fail when he gets out of prison. So we applied for a federal grant. It's an 1115 grant. So those of you who are government employees know that's a demonstration grant, which meant that we wanted to learn something from it. It wasn't necessarily going to be something that was sustainable, just economically and resources, but we wanted to learn lessons from it. These are all the partners in the grant. Again, the video and all of the information specific to this grant are on the Minnesota Fathers and Families Network website, and that website is in my PowerPoint notes. So this grant served fathers that were being released from Faribault. They were releasing to Hennepin or Ramsey County, and they had a child support case open in one of those counties. We also took domestic violence issues into consideration, and we made sure that we screened our participants to deal with those safety issues. We didn't exclude somebody who had protection issues with the mother of the child or the caregiver of the child, but we took those issues into consideration and made sure we had safety plans. Services provided were intensive fatherhood case management. You heard David Marambo, who was our case manager, talk on the video. He met with the guys in Faribault about 6 months before they were released and then continued to work with them on the outside, dealing with fatherhood issues. That's how it was supposed to be. And then we had our child support people working specifically with child support issues, whether that be lifting the suspension on a driver's license, which is huge. Those of you who don't know, if you don't pay your child support, your license will be suspended. It's an issue on reentry. So we worked specifically with those child support issues, and then it ended up, we partnered with a Second Chance grant and had employment and mentoring services that were also offered to our guys. It ended up being so much more. We couldn't have picked a better case manager for doing the project. He's a case manager at the Father Project, and David had his phone on. He had a specific phone for Mind the Gap. He had that phone on 24/7, and he answered it 24/7. Oftentimes our guys got out. Again, life happens. Everybody has great intentions when they walk out of our prison doors. I mean, I have yet to meet a guy who seriously looked at me and said, I'm going out and I'm gonna immediately screw up. I'm not gonna connect with my kids. I'm gonna be a bad dad. I'm gonna do all this. Best intentions, life happens. So he had guys who would get in trouble. They would have chemical dependency issues and they would use. And he would pick them up and he would work with the agent and try to get them into treatment versus them ending up back in our system. So he did so much more with this grant. Why was this grant important? Obviously the kids. We talk about the 2.7 million children that are affected by incarceration. They're affected by incarceration. They're also affected by our child support system in the nation and in Minnesota. Paternity laws, those, you might want to look at those. Most of our children born of our incarcerated men are born outside of marriage, over 80%. Over 80% of the kids, of the guys that I'm working with in our state prisons are born outside of marriage, which means that these fathers do not have any rights to see or have any input in these children's lives until they go to court to do so. It's important for the dads. We forget about the dads, I think. Incarceration affects their ability to parent. It affects their child support situation. And mom or the caregiver. We know that most of the children of the men who are incarcerated in our state prisons anyway are living with the mother. Versus the opposite's not necessarily true. The children of the women who are incarcerated in Shakopee, a pretty small percentage of them are actually living with the biological father, which I find interesting. But we need to support those caregivers. That's where we come in. We need to support the families of these people who are incarcerated. The grant was a benefit to the agencies, to the Department of Corrections, to child support in many ways. The biggest way, I think, is the collaboration that happened and the communication that happened between the two agencies. We didn't know a whole lot about each other. And honestly, society doesn't know a whole lot about either of the systems, right? Department of Corrections is unless you're involved in it, or unless you're working with it, or unless you seek out the information, people don't know, or maybe don't even really care what happens in our prisons and jails, how visiting works, how parenting works. Child support's the same way. Unless you end up in the system, most people don't understand how it works. So the communication and the collaboration was one of the biggest things that came out of this. Recidivism reduction. Department of Corrections people know this is one of our biggest measurements. We want to know, what do we do inside that reduces that recidivism rate? I can tell you that we had a control group. We actually did research on our guys. We had about 100 guys that ended up participating in what we consider participating in the program, which means that they signed up on the inside, they met with David in the inside, and they actually showed up once they got out. Because we had a lot of people who signed up on the inside and then didn't follow through, obviously, when they got out. But we had about 100 people who did. Those 100 people, those gentlemen, have half the recidivism rate that our control group did. So it was at about 15%. Out of that group, the 15%, almost all went back to prison on a violation and not on a new crime. So they didn't go out and commit a new crime. They violated the terms of their release. Remember, we talked about the 2/3, 1/3, and they ended up going back in and spending their time in there. But they didn't commit a new crime. To me, that's huge. We hope, and we have measured better parenting skills. The Father Project has a 12-week parenting class that all these gentlemen took advantage of. So we're hoping that their parenting skills were increased. Child support. On that end, we want fathers to financially support their kids. It's important. And this statistic didn't go exactly the way we thought it would. We thought that we were going to give all these resources to these fathers: employment, housing, parenting, wraparound services, and suddenly they were all going to pay their child support. And we were going to have this huge increase. That didn't happen. But the education piece did, because what I think child support realized was that was not really a very realistic expectation, that somebody was going to walk out the door of Lino Lakes or Faribault, suddenly get a job, and be able to pay their child support. Again, we need to understand that the men that I work with in general, just in the general population, have 2.5 child support cases on average. Okay, so that means that they owe child support on 2.5 families of children. That's the average. I work with gentlemen, and in fact, in our Mind the Gap, we have a gentleman who has 16 children with 9 different moms. Okay? How you financially support that family dynamic, I don't know. But we did find that we needed to get these gentlemen on the road to success, stabilized in their chemical dependency, stabilized in their housing, stabilized in true employment before it was realistic that this financial obligation of child support was going to be able to be met. We hope that they have better relationships with their children. Anecdotally, I can tell you, Armand brought his daughter to our get-together a year ago, and I can see healthy interactions with the dads and their children. Mind the Gap fits the evolving underlying philosophy. Corrections is changing our philosophy. We have what's called TPC, and we're government, so we use acronyms for everything. What's TPC mean? Transition from prison to community. I think what the change in philosophy means that every interaction that we have with an offender on the inside matters. Every single interaction. The interaction with the guards, the interaction with health services. We want to use our opportunities and our interactions to positively affect the offenders so that they're in a better position to successfully transition out of our prisons. And we also want to change how we do things on the inside so that the second they walk in the door, they're thinking about what they need to do, what they need to change, what they need to work on that's going to help them successfully get out and stay out. Whether that's education, whether that's dealing with their chemical dependency issues, whether it's dealing with their child support. All of those things matter, and they need to start thinking about them from day one, not 3 months before they get out. Child support also has a change of philosophy, which, if you know anything about child support, this is pretty big news. Child support is a very, very powerful collection agency, and that's what we were. We didn't deal with people as people. We dealt with bank accounts and money and jobs and getting child support, and that's all important. Financially supporting your kids is important. I was in child support for 17 years before I came to the Department of Corrections. I believe that child support's necessary. However, I think we also have to be cognizant of all of the other things that are going on, and that we use MCI numbers, which is their code number on our computer. Every MCI number represents a person, a real live person who has things going on. Jobs, economic stability, they have families, they have healthcare issues, they have all sorts of things going on that we also need to be cognizant of. We can't necessarily fix them, but we need to know where to send people to deal with these things. And we need to remember that they're important. So why is dealing with fathers, dealing with mothers, dealing with parenting issues while people are incarcerated, why is that important? To me, it's important because this is Alex, and you'll maybe meet him later. He's our Sesame Street character on our incarcerated video who has a father who's incarcerated. It's important because it matters to Alex. I mean, it does. It matters to those kids. It matters to those fathers and mothers. It matters to us. These people are going to be released from prison. They're going to be living next door to you. They're going to go to the YMCA and work out next to you. Their kids are going to go to your school and already do go to your children's schools. It matters to us as a society. We need to start thinking about how we can help people re-enter society successfully. Do you have any questions?